Standing in front of this house, Marek Lisinski can't help but be overcome by memories of a crime that was committed against him. Marek was sexually abused here in his hometown, Poniatowa, behind these very walls. He was only 12 years old when it happened. His tormentor was the local priest.
I didn't understand what was happening to me. No one spoke to us children about sexuality or masturbation back then. I didn't understand it, and it wasn't until I realized that this person had no right to do those things to me. Then I decided to stop coming here.
It took Marek a long time before he was able to speak about what had happened to him. His own father had left the family, and the priest had been like a father to him. Marek was an altar server at the local church when he was abused. Today there are 300,000 altar boys and girls in Poland, a deeply Catholic country, where parents feel proud to see their children become altar servers. Now, although the subject was taboo for decades, more and more reports of abusive pedophile priests are surfacing.
The perpetrator took advantage of the fact that I came from a difficult family and didn't want to talk about my feelings. He bound himself to me and sexually abused me for months.
The experience nearly destroyed Mark. He changed schools several times, increasingly withdrew, began drinking heavily. At age 40, he was finally able to open up to a therapist.
It was during one of those many sessions that I was able to talk about the abuse for the first time. I now also think my alcoholism was caused by my childhood experiences.
Marek has begun to fight back. He's tracked down reports of sexual abuse and marked their locations on this map. To date, 150 cases have been confirmed. He says there are many more in his archive. Mark's courage has brought more and more people to the streets to protest sexual abuse in the church. At this rally in Warsaw, victim testimonies from Marek's archives were read out loud, including one by a 15-year-old girl who had asked her priest for help.
I accompanied him to the door of the sacristy. That's when it happened a second time. He put his hand in my underwear. I was wearing a long jacket, and he put his hand inside, opened my zipper, and touched my private parts.
Real-life stories like these fed into the Polish film The Clergy, which depicts pedophilia within the church in Poland, and which has already been watched by 5 million people. The attention meant the church had to face its crimes. A coordinator for the protection of children and young people has been tasked with raising awareness of sexual abuse among the Polish clergy. However, Adam Jacques doesn't seem to think the bishop's courts give tougher sentences to priests who have assaulted children.
Look at the sentences by the state courts. They only impose work suspensions, or rule that an accused may not approach children for 5 to a maximum of 10 years. It says in the Gospel that all baptized persons must be treated equally, so no exception must be made here.
Marek's priest was also summoned to appear before the bishop's court 30 years after the abuse. During the proceedings, Marek had to recount the worst experiences of his life one more time.
The questioning lasted for hours. I had to describe every detail of what had been done to me. 3 years later, there was a verdict, and the perpetrator was convicted. He now serves as a pastor again. He hasn't been stripped of his position. He's just fine. He received virtually no punishment.
So far, a few dozen priests have been sentenced by the bishop's courts in Poland. Marek is sure the real figure is much higher. He couldn't say how high exactly, because church records remain closed to the public.